Hi, I'm Tom Carr, and this is the Property Web. So if you're on a property journey or you're ready to start one, you've probably asked yourself, who can actually help? This is a bit difficult. So as a mortgage broker, I'm tempted to say it would be me, but I also want to help you go that much further. This podcast is here to introduce you to experts who can support, provide guidance, and just get you to move forward. My goal is really here to help you make an informed decision about who you want to work with and just to get that property dream on track. So today, I've got an excellent guest, someone who brings different perspective and really kind of unique skills, which I'm really impressed about. So Wilson Tran is an up-and-coming lawyer. He's already made a big impact, but he's now positioning himself into his next chapter, via his new business, and really delighted to have you on. So Wilson, hello.
Thank you for that introduction. I think, it's something that I've always wanted to do. So I think starting it this year, it's been a big journey. I think a lot of things to learn, but so far I've met wonderful people. I don't think I've met anybody that I regret meeting just yet. So yeah, I think one of the people that I met is such as yourself, and these types of encounters they happen quite randomly. We didn't expect to meet at that time.
Absolutely not. No, and I think what really impressed me when I first met you was that you are deeply into your community. The community of small business, but also just where you live and how you look out for people. It just really came across when you hosted an event and that I was at. I think that probably plays a big part in why you're doing this, right?
Well, a lot of the work that we do, it's for our community, right? So we don't just do work for our clients, but also our local businesses around the area. So that's why I like to go out, go to chamber events, go to networking events, such as the one we met at, just because you get to honestly just meet people, right? A lot of these events that I go to, the purpose of it is not to just get business, get leads or anything like that, but it's honestly just to meet new people. Everyone has their own journey. Everybody has been through something. And I've learned that quite a lot over the last couple of months that I've been meeting all these people. So there's people that have been through journeys that you wouldn't have expected. You wouldn't have expected at all. So yeah, it's been a good time.
Good stuff. I think it's always good to just step back a little bit and just rewind. So would love to hear a little bit more about where you kind of started, where you grew up and, where you went to uni. What got you started on this path?
Well, I think the journey starts quite early on. It started in primary school, to be honest.
Wow.
In year 6, that's when I decided I wanted to become a lawyer. Now, I still remember the conversation that I had with a classmate of mine quite vividly. He asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? That's a typical conversation you have in primary school, right? Everyone asks each other, what do you want to do? And I told him at the time, Queen's Counsel. And he thought that was a council worker, the people, doing the work on the roads and everything like that. And I think he's like, why on earth would you want to have that as a dream job? No, it's more along the lines of being one of the best lawyers in your profession. And that's at the stage of a barrister. So I had that ambition from the get-go. I wouldn't say that I want to be a barrister nowadays. I've talked to a couple of them, worked with a lot of them as well. They're a different kind of beast. And I don't think that's for me. You don't meet as many people working as a barrister. So it did start quite early on. Then when I moved to high school, that was always the end goal. I've always worked towards that. I've always studied towards doing anything legal related, right? Even when the first opportunity to study legal studies came around, that's what I did, right? And I was quite involved in that. I talked a lot to my teachers, asked them, what's the profession really like? Because you hear certain things in shows or on the news and everything like that, but what's the reality of the profession? You don't know that until you talk to somebody in it. And when I spoke to him, so he was a legal studies teacher at high school. So I went to school at East Hills Boys High School, and we called him Mr. George. And at that time, he goes, my cousin became a lawyer. I became a teacher. I deeply regret my decision. I should have become a lawyer instead. Make lots more money than that, than a teacher. So that advice he gave to me quite early on, and he guided me through the process of entering the profession. Now, following that, I took every opportunity I could trying to get into uni early. So even before HSC, I did early admissions into different types of unis for legal-related courses. So I did, kind of criminal justice. I tried to get into a Bachelor of Laws and everything as well. And at this time, I was very interested in the criminal field. So I wanted to become a public prosecutor. And very different. I used to do criminal law. I'm not cut out for that. Okay, I can't sleep at night when I do that type of work. And now I'm in the commercial realm. So I went to uni at Macquarie Uni. It's a good uni, but it's just really far, honestly, because I live around the Bankstown area. So it was quite a commute. I lost pretty much my entire day on the commute alone. But yeah, that's a bit of background about myself. If not too much on a tangent.
Yeah, there. No. I mean, I think it's so interesting how people get started, right? And I think it's so interesting how people get started, and everyone has their own story. But I wonder whether there was one thing about the law that really hooked you, because you got into it in such a young age. I think it's quite rare. Was there some sort of extra experience that sort of pushed you down that path, or?
Not so much of my own personal experience. It's more of my parents. So my parents came from Vietnam. They came here during the war, and they came by boat. So they went to various detention centres in Malaysia and as well as in Australia, where they weren't let into the country for quite some time. During that period, when all the Vietnamese people that came here, they settled in Cabramatta. And when police came knocking on their door, they were shaking from the get-go. Not a single word has been said by a police officer or anything. It's just the fact that they are a police officer that scares them to the bones. So when a police officer walks around and they knock on your door, you assume that there's going to be trouble for yourself. And, coming to a new country, not knowing the language, not knowing what the laws are, you don't know what your rights are, you just accept whatever's said to you and you follow their command pretty much. And that was my parents' generation. They came here, they were very scared of police, and they had no clue what their rights were. So I think that kind of set the foundation for me to learn about the law, learn about the rights. And that's why I wanted to go into criminal law at first, because criminal law is probably the most prominent area of law where everyone thinks about in their day-to-day life. Am I doing what I'm doing legal? Is someone else doing something that's illegal? More of personal related matters, not commercial, right? Commercial only comes about when someone's thinking about investing or running a business or something like that. Whereas these experiences were deeply ingrained into your criminal law.
Yeah, okay. So I can totally see where that spark would have come from. And that's it's such an experience for you to be around and for them to sort of come over here. And you do hear these stories, but it's you don't meet, not everyone has kind of got that real life, first-hand experience of it. So, no, okay, I totally get that. So you've done your pivot now. So you've gone through this sort of phase. You've got your uni qualifications. You've got the experience started, but now you're really going for your own business and to kind of start your own chapter. So tell us a little bit more about Skyline Lawyers, which is the business you've set up. And, who are you actually looking to help? What is the sort of motivating force?
Well, I've pivoted my clients quite a bit nowadays. So in the past, I've acted for quite large entities. So there's 5 shopping centre owners recognised by the Shopping Centre Council of Australia. I used to act for 3 of them. And as well as I used to act for quite large entities doing large transactions. Nowadays, I've pivoted more towards your mums and dads, small businesses, those kinds of entities, because my view is that a lot of these types of people and entities view legal advice as more of, it's if I have the budget for it, I'll engage services. They don't view it as a necessity. And very often, because I do litigation work, so dispute work, I see when all these things go wrong because they decided, we're not going to make the budget for legal advice because it's not a necessity. And I see those issues come across my desk in litigation. So at Skyline Lawyers, we like to do work that is along the realm of commercial law, property law, and litigation. The reason is because I work with close with other professionals, and as well as whenever a client is looking to do anything, it will more likely fall within one of those three types of categories. When they're looking into, going into a joint venture with somebody, their friend could have told them a dream about, let's go do this together, right? Then I'm there to be able to assist them. When they're looking to buy, sell, lease property, I'm there to assist them with that process, all the way through to when things go wrong, because you can't help it. Sometimes things do go wrong in transactions, and I'm there to help them and guide them through that process as well. And so what the point of difference that we try to make is we try to make sure that everyone has equal access to good legal advice, despite the value of the transaction, despite the value of the entity, despite anything. Even if you're a mum and dad just starting out your business, you have very low capital. You don't have that much money, but I want to make sure that you have access to the same legal advice as those billion-dollar clients, as those shopping center owners. And that's what a philosophy that we try to ingrain into Skyline Lawyers.
Yeah, I think I remember this when we first met. I mean, you talked about some really hectic transactions, $400 million, 200 simultaneous settlements. And I just thought, wow, this is kind of next level. But really, you're trying to bring it back to something more practical for people. And you, maybe just tell me a bit more about that sort of engagement. When people are thinking about whether this is for them, how do you bring them through? What do you, how do you treat someone differently to a big corporate?
So the thing that I've always kept in mind is I always try to understand the audience that I have in mind. Now, institutional landlords, such as your shopping center owners, they already know certain terms. They know legal terms. They know certain documents that they need, and they know the processes, because these entities have been around since ASIC started, pretty much, right? Whereas your mums and dads, they don't know these standard terms. Something as simple for us, such as cooling off, exchange, settlement, those terms are so standard for us that we assume everybody knows those terms. But what I try to keep in mind at all times is that not everybody has come across these terms before. So I tailored my advice depending on who my client is. Nowadays, I tend to go through a process where I explain a lot more, because mums and dads, this might be their first property. This might be their first company. So I go through the process of explaining things more. And the way that I try to do that is, let's say for a typical purchase of a residential property, I'll go through a process of preparing a letter of advice, and as well as a consultation to really walk them through what are you buying, what's the property circumstances, and if it's strata, well, what's the actual strata's circumstance, right? So I try to walk them through that all before they go pen to paper on any contract whatsoever. And I've noticed a vast difference in the processes in my profession between lawyers and conveyancers. I've known people in the past that have gone through the process of advice after the client has already signed the contract. In my view, that's too late, right? I've met far too many people that have bought property that have no clue what they actually bought. And so I really want to make a different type of process, one that betters the client more than the professionals.
Yeah, I think this is something that did ring true to me when we've spoken before. It's about getting that upfront advice. It's never too early to have that first conversation. It doesn't mean to say that you need to be buying something straight after, but it's just about knowing what your rights are, what you need to look out for. And it sort of brings me on to a question. I mean, a lot of people watching this will be property investors, or they're kind of making their first transaction. What would you say to someone like that, someone who's kind of starting out? What was one of the things to really look out for? Well,
the thing to really look out for, I'd say, is always with either strata reports or pest and building reports, right? Because even in recent times, over the last few weeks, this happened yesterday, right? I look at a contract at a property. The contract looks perfect. We're fine. We have very minimal contract amendments in negotiating that. The price was pretty much agreed already. So on the contract side of things were perfect. It was setting to go ahead. But when they sent me the strata report and I really looked into it, first of all, the executive summary of the strata report was incorrect. So it noted very summary things and made conclusions that had no basis. And on top of that, it's only when you really look at strata records, the actual official records of the strata, that you can then determine how is this property ran, financially, and as well as the stability of the building itself. In a building that I looked at yesterday, they went through litigation 2 years ago that resulted in nearly $6 million in judgment fees, and they had 65 balconies to fix for waterproofing issues. And that was the update we received was in 2024. So that was a year ago. There's no update since. And that update received said, we have 65 balconies that require fixing, but we might have an additional 24, depending on testing. And that was in 2024 with no update to date. So in a year, you're telling me that you don't know what the extent of repairs are going to be and how much it's going to cost, where you just went through litigation that's worth $6 million. Now, in the grand scheme of things, $6 million might seem like a lot and enough money to fix a property. But in a strata building where there's roughly 150 to 200 strata units, $6 million is not much in the grand scheme of things. And my biggest problem from this, I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but my biggest gripe from this, honestly, is agents selling people a dream. Their agent told the client that the financial position is perfect, it's strong, there's no problems with the building whatsoever. There's only a couple of works being conducted, and we're set. There's no problems with the property whatsoever.
I think this is a good point because it's so easy just to gloss over some of the sales pitches that we get. Talk to me about one of the examples that you've experienced where you've actually perhaps gone beyond and sort of really tried to delve into this.
Yep. So a specific one happened. From the top of my mind, I can remember one that happened last week. So this happens a lot more frequently than people think. And this is why it's so important to obtain good advice from the get-go, because I looked at the strata report. Right, this is a common occurrence. It's strata properties that always have problems. Now, this strata report, it looked fine, right? There was only one thing that I was looking at that might be a bit of a problem, but it shouldn't have been. And that was in the annual general meeting of the strata 2 years prior, there was a special levy raised of $12,000. Now, the special levy, the motion that was passed said that it was a special levy of $12,000 for the purpose of, stage 1 and 1A works. And since that motion was passed and the consultant was engaged for those stage 1 and 1A works, nothing was ever discussed again. Now, for the most part, if you think that there's $12,000 in a whole strata building split between all the unit holders, it's not too bad, right? It will only amount to a couple $100 per person, not too bad. But the part that got me extremely curious is the fact that it was never discussed again for the years after. And on top of that, it didn't detail what stage 1 and 1A works actually were. Now, this prompted me. I was honestly 98% there telling the client, we're almost good. It's a go for this one. Nothing wrong with the strata. But I decided, let me call the building consultant. So I searched him, I found him, and I called him. I asked him, I don't know if you recall, but you did work on this building probably about 2-3 years ago. And it was for stage 1 and 1A works. What were they? He looked in his file, he goes, I remember this building. Stage 1 and 1A was just an inspection and report as to what's wrong with the building. And I was like, okay, so it must have been fine if there was nothing going forward. He goes, no, I told Strata that there were major building defects here. The building was not compliant. And on top of that, there was waterproofing issues for the balcony, and there was concrete spalling. So that's when it cracks, it falls apart and everything. And that was on the balcony and the top. And that building alone was not compliant. So technically, nobody should be living in that building. Now, it wasn't discussed for the years after. And I asked him, okay, but how much did you recommend? Like, how much would it cost to fix all this? He goes, a couple $1 million to fix. And that one little wording in the annual general meeting that said $12,000 for stage 1 and 1A works prompted an inquiry which led to a finding that the building was not compliant. There was huge works that need to be done, and it's going to cost a couple of $1 million to fix. And on top of that, it was never discussed again.
So this is a great example of you going beyond perhaps where others may not, and you actually went and found a building manager totally off script in a way, and you found, I'm guessing this is kind of critical information for the client. They need this to kind of really make a decision about whether they want to buy or not.
Well, when I called the client, because I like to write my advice, but then I also give them a call to have a little consultation about it, answer any questions that they might have, right? And also sometimes when I write things, it might not come across the way that I think it does. So that's why it's worthwhile for me to have a consultation and talk them through it. And the first thing the client said to me was not, "Hi, Wilson, how are you? How was your day?" or anything. It was like, "What would I do without you, Wilson?" That was the very first thing he said to me. And safe to say, he didn't buy that building. He didn't buy that property.
Just money well spent, to get that advice, get those insights. I mean, that's really what people want.
Exactly.
They don't always get it, but this is exactly why we're here, to kind of show you that people will be fighting for you if you find the right person. That's amazing. I love that story. And it sort of talks to the process as well. Well, maybe you can touch a bit more on the process, perhaps for that client, how they reached you, how they kind of got from start to finish.
Yep. So what my general process is, I want to have, always from the get-go, I want to have a discussion with them to see, what are your circumstances? What are you looking at? What's your deal breakers? Because everyone that first goes look for a property, they have a whole set list of wishes that they've been keeping up for their entire life. They saw on Instagram, they saw on social media and saying, "Oh, this is such a beautiful thing to have. I'm going to have this in my first home." But the reality is very harsh. It's if you don't have the budget for it, you need to decide what is a want and what is a need. And you might have some things that are considered deal breakers, and you let that go. So the process, what I do is I first have that consultation with them, discuss all the circumstances. What are you looking for? How can I help you? Right? What's my role that you want me to play here? Do you want me to play a role that, just tells you to go ahead with things or not? Right? And if they tell me, all I want you to do is just 2-second look at the contract. If it's all good, you just tell me, all good. I'm not that type of person. And it's safe to say that I tell clients, I don't do summary reviews of contracts, because if I do a very quick summary review of it, I'm going to miss a lot of things. You might be stuck with a property that you don't like. And I tell people this every day. Buying the property is the easy part. Keeping it, that's the difficult part.
Yeah, we do hear so many stories of things that have gone wrong. So no, I love that aspect to it. So you really do take that. Well, essentially you're saying you want to find the right client fit as well, someone who's going to trust you, but also, someone you can work with to really give them the right information.
Correct.
And not everyone wants it, unfortunately,
but I think you need to determine, all right, so how do you like to carry yourself professionally? And that's the way I like to carry myself professionally. It's give that advice and understand that I don't do quick reviews of things. It's that I go through the proper processes to make sure that you're best represented. So I guess the long way to say the first step is I have a consultation to discuss what their needs are. Following that, they can go off, find whatever property they want to go find. Now, there's two parts to that. When they find a property that they like, I tell them, always go to your mortgage broker, ask for something like a CoreLogic RP data report, just so we know what the value of the property is. Otherwise, you might fall into a trap where you're pre-approved this much, but you're not going to be formally approved that much. No bank's going to give you $1 million for something that's worth $500,000, right? So I tell them that's the first step. That's not my side of things, but always consult with your broker first. Next, come to me. I'll give you an advice on it. I'll review the contract, strata report, pest and building report, whatever you have, and I'll give something called a letter of advice. Now, ordinarily, people aren't going to read 10 pages worth of information, but it's more of, it's a visual aid, I find, at the end of the day. That way, when I talk to clients through a contract, they know what I'm going to talk about already. They're more easily going to remember that. If I talk half an hour through a contract and they've never seen what I'm going to talk to them about, they're not going to remember that. I wouldn't remember that. Even as a lawyer reviewing contracts daily, I wouldn't remember half an hour of someone talking me through a contract. Second part of it is also, it's a memory trigger, right? When they go home at the end of the day, they go, oh, I remember Wilson talked about this. This was a very important point. And then they can always refer back to that letter of advice, something to refer back to, a memory trigger, right? It's also a memory trigger for lawyers as well, because I have a client where a property didn't sold. I gave him advice on it. A property didn't sell for a couple of months, but the circumstance changed a bit where it enabled him to go buy that property. Without that letter of advice, I wouldn't have been able to quickly refer back to the letter of advice and say, oh, I remember this property now. These were the circumstances. Certain things have changed now. Letter of advice helps both parties remember what happened. Following that, so that's when I go through a contract negotiation phase, and I negotiate this upfront before exchange, before signing the contract, because this is when you have the biggest bargaining power. I had a first home buyer, his toilet wasn't working. And if you try to negotiate for the vendor to fix the toilet after you exchange, they're going to say no. They have no requirement to. If they're, out of their goodwill, they might do it. But the thing is, they have no requirement to once you've exchanged. 9 times out of 10, I think they would say not agreed to go fix the toilet. And they're definitely not going to incorporate that into the contract, right? Imagine it's your first home, you have a housewarming and your toilet doesn't work. That's a big problem, right? So then I go through this process of contract negotiation. Once we've ticked off all the boxes. So I review the contract, I've given you advice, you understand the advice, there's a price that's agreed, and that price it's valuable, it's worth what its value is, right? And as well as we now have an agreed contract, no problems with the property from what I can see, then I'll tell the client, we're safe to go ahead now. All right. I may lose a couple of transactions this way because it's a slower process, right? I try to turn around things as fast as I can. But the thing is, ultimately, it's a slower process than a lawyer saying, oh, the contract looks pretty standard, sign it, right? It's never going to be faster than that. But the thing is, I go through the proper process to make sure that my client's best interests are taken into account. It's paramount for me.
Yeah, and you're being upfront about it as well. Like, there may be other quicker lawyers who can just nut things out, but if they're not doing the right checks, what's the point? So I think it's very good to be upfront, right?
Yeah. We lost the deal 2 weeks ago or so. It was supposed to be a pre-launch off-the-plan development, and we hadn't known this, but the developer sent out the contract to 4 buyers for the same property, which they weren't supposed to do. It was supposed to be exclusive, but the thing is, one person exchanged on the night that they received the contract, and we know that they didn't receive advice on it. They signed a 66W, so there was no cooling off period, and they paid the full deposit. No advice. And they were locked in. They're going to be locked in for we don't know how long. Could be 10 years for all we know.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That just shows you the need to actually get that advice. So it's been excellent talking to you, Wilson. Really appreciate your time. And is there anything else that we maybe haven't covered, or any sort of final thoughts? Like, I'd be interested to know what your sort of goals are over the next sort of period. What do you want to do with the business?
The goal is always to grow, right? But at the same time that I do this, I also meet more people. So I've always said that when I opened up my firm, I'm not going to say no to anybody if they want to come meet me. I'm going to make that time. I'm going to go out, have a coffee with them, have a chat with them, get to know them as a person. Because when I have these chats with people, when I network with people, there's no expectation of business whatsoever. I tell everyone that I meet, if you simply don't like the way that I look, the way that I talk, you don't like the shape of my eyebrow, don't send my way, don't engage me for it, because I want to make sure that you're happy going ahead with me or anything like that, because there's no obligation whatsoever. No, it's a great way to be. Tell us how people can get in touch with you. Yeah, so, I'm very easy. They can contact me through email, phone, and on my website, I have a contact form as well. They can do that. Generally, I respond quite quickly. Otherwise, they can come by my office and I can see them in person.
Knock on your door,
have a coffee with them as well.
Awesome. And I'll put those details in this link as well. So, everyone, thank you for listening, and Wilson, appreciate you being here.
Thank you for your time. It's been wonderful. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.